patient to healthcare workers, because healthcare providers are doing their duty, and it is time. They have never shirked, actually. So everybody, I'm very confident as a clinician, and you yourself know that, you highlighted that also, that all of us who are part of the medical industry, as a caregiver, as a doctor, nursing officer, in any capacity, as a paramedical. I mean, all of us have chosen this profession because there's a small point of empathy which is there, and all of us love to serve people. And this is a time where the entire industry has risen up and stood up in the face of disaster, uh, and, and a real salute to all the corona warriors which are out there serving the nation right now. I mean, all of us. I mean, so that's a really, really, the smallest we can do, the least we can do, the least the entire nation can do is to salute them, as our PMO, our Mananiya Pradhan Mantri ji has also done on so many occasions. So that is there. But coming now to the communication part, which is a very, very important part. So to know the nitty-gritty of communicating, I mean, communicating in such a scenario, there are so many aspects to it. Let me invite Dr. Indu Arneja, madam. She's a master trainer, she's a communication specialist, and she's the director of the Indian Institute of Communication. So, madam, all over to you. Please share your screen, and after that, we will talk to Dr. Pranita Joshi Deshmukh, and then we'll take questions and answers.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Anuj, for setting the tone. I think you really, in a very crisp manner, you actually set the tone by telling what are the mental health, concerns, not only now, but even later on that we can expect to see in the time to come. And it's going to impact everybody, care providers, as well as the patients and their families and society on the whole. And right now also, when the healthcare providers are communicating with the patients and their family, or even the families when they're communicating with healthcare providers, there are a lot of communication challenges, because this is something that nobody was kind of, prepared for or never thought of. So there's no doubt that it is something very unprecedented, challenging time, which we had never thought of. Emotions are very high, and there's a lot at stake, and we know the number of deaths as we get to see for all across the world. That's very scary. Thankfully in India things are not that bad, but definitely we are all worried that it should actually, really stay smooth, and we should sail through it. Everybody is feeling anxious and confused, especially the healthcare providers who are the frontline warriors. They are the one who are facing the brunt of this situation. So for them, I think situation is all the more tough, and asking them to communicate effectively with the patient and their family, I think for a moment they may feel that it is too much, but we got to help them understand that communication is something which plays a very big role. It's going to actually make it or break it. And also communicating effectively with the patient, their family, and in general with the public is also going to ease their work if they know what is the right way of communicating with the patient and their family. At this moment, the communication needs of the patients and the family are increased, definitely, because even they are unaware of what the illness is, how it is going to impact them, what are their, how exactly are they supposed to handle it, and the way they sometimes react the moment they get to know that they need, they may be corona positive. So that is something that we really need to understand, that we have to handle even that kind of a situation where the patient may not cooperate with us, which we are seeing all across the country at many occasions. Similarly, the communication with your team and with your staff member also plays a very big role, because patient care is a teamwork, and especially in the hours of crisis, every person is important for, looking after the patient, or at least managing the show. So each one of us is equally responsible for making sure that our spirit stays high, and also we boost the, team spirit, so that everybody feels connected and is ready to give their best. And at the same time, we all need to be very mindful of our communication with general public and media, the messages that we receive and the messages that we spread, and even when we talk to people, how it can actually go into media and can create a havoc. So let's take an example. of our communication with the patient. For example, if there's a patient needing quarantine, and the moment you tell them that okay, you or your family needs to go for quarantine, we all have seen mostly the immediate reaction is no. They don't want to accept it. They feel that it is something that is not correct for them. So usually they will actually resist quarantine. Some of them may say, okay, I'm not sick, I don't have any symptoms, how can I be positive? I never came in contact with anybody who who has a travel history or who has a history, who is corona positive. So all this is actually and they may even insist that okay, I'll stay at home and I'll take all precautions, so please don't put me on quarantine in hospital or in quarantine area. So this is nothing but actually illness denial. So anybody who is given a very serious kind of a diagnosis, so immediate response of the mind and the body is that how can this happen to me? This cannot happen to me. So this may upset us, but we have to remember that we have to deal with it in a non-aggressive way. So this is how the human mind reacts to a shocking news. So it's not the person or the patient who is behaving like this, it is his or her response to the illness. So we may feel like becoming angry or aggressive with the patient, but we have to be very careful of our response to the situation. This is denial, and we have to deal with it in a firm manner, but a non-aggressive way. So here we have to help them see the benefit of quarantine and also the risk of not following the guidelines. Especially if you will try to tell them the harm they can do to the society or people around them, trust me, honestly, I don't think they will care much for it. But if you are able to emphasize to them the risk to their family, especially to the elderlies at home or to the kids at home, that may make sense with them and they may agree with you. So you also got to support your point of, point to them with the data available or the reports that are available with you to help them see the reality so that they agree with you and understand your point of view. So there are certain communication skills that will come handy. I've listed them here. There are many more. I'm going to briefly discuss all these skills that will be useful when you are interacting with the patient or even with your team. So when it comes to the communication style, some of us might immediately become aggressive, or we may feel bad and may not say anything, but they are all very unhealthy way of handling a situation. In a stressful situation, assertion is the only right way of communication. Assertion is when you say what you have to say in a firm tone, matching it with the right words and right tone of voice. So if I say communication has three parts, one is the language, that's the word that you will choose. Second is the tone of voice, and third is your body language. So all these three things have to be in an appropriate measure if you want to make your communication assertive, because assertion would make sense to patient and public in general. Assertion will also keep you calm and relaxed when you are communicating because it is not making you aggressive. So when you are choosing your language with the patient, make sure that you use simple, respectful, and decent language. Even if you are in an authority position, please do not be rude, aggressive, or do not use any indecent language for anybody, be it patient, their family, or even with your team members. So you have to actually make sure that you use words that are decent and respectful, words that are comforting and helpful to communication. So very consciously, you have to learn to stay calm and speak slowly. So when you speak slowly, you get a chance to design your communication. You get a chance to choose the right kind of words that you would like to use. In hurry when we speak, or in aggression when we speak, there's a risk we might use a wrong word or a foul word which can be insulting or intimidating to the person. So very consciously, if you will speak slowly, automatically you will get a chance to choose the right word to speak. Another communication aspect that I would emphasize here is practice this habit of listening more and speaking less to save on energy, especially in this stressful period where a lot of communication has to be made with people and with the patient and with public in general, or even with your staff. So make it a habit to listen more and speak less, because normally when we communicate with the patient or their family, we have a tendency to speak more. But in this stressful period, if you are speaking too much, at the end of the day, you are going to feel exhausted. The other day, I received a call from a friend of mine who is working in the control room, and they are almost handling 1,000 calls in a day. So there are 8 or 10 of them who are on duty and they are handling the calls. And she mentioned that at the end of the day, we completely feel exhausted after answering those calls. So what do we do if we have to receive so many calls? So what I suggested her that usually when patients call you, they are panicking, they are apprehensive, and they have a lot to speak. Many a times they speak some of the things that are not relevant and they don't make much sense. So best is to allow them to speak, listen to them attentively. One, your listening attentively will actually act as therapy to them. They'll be comfortable that there's somebody who is listening and understanding. Simultaneously, you can keep a notepad in your hand, note down the key points that you want to address. Once the patient has finished, or once the person who has called you has finished, answer those queries, what they're asking for, and then end the call. So that way you will be saving your energy, and similarly, you will actually be able to satisfy the other person. Similarly, in work situation where you're dealing with patient and public, you will have to actually develop mindfully the habit of listening more and talking less. The thumb rule is listen 80% and talk 20%. You got to really see if we can bring this kind of change in our thing. Another thing that we have to remember, please avoid using any aggressive or snubbing language, especially with your colleagues, with your subordinates. It's a teamwork. You require everybody's cooperation. If you snub them in public, if you insult them in public, chances are that they're going to feel hurt, they're going to feel bad. They may not answer you back immediately. They may not even say you anything because of your position in the system, but in the heart of their heart, they will be demotivated, and then they will not give their best. Quite possible they may not even cooperate with you and can create trouble for you. So at workplace, try not to be aggressive or rude or arrogant with your team members, and even with the patient and public. Even with the patient's attendant, if you are aggressive, there is a more likelihood of having an aggressive reaction from the patient party. So very mindfully, we have to avoid this kind of a communication. As I said, communication has three parts. One is words, second is the tone of voice, and third is the body language. So when we talk about the tone of voice, the quality of your talk, the speed that you use to talk, even the volume of your speech, pitch of your voice, the quality of your tone, everything has a communication to make. Communication is not what you say, but it is how you say. So very carefully we have to match our tone of voice to the words that we choose, because we have to make sure that our communication does not communicate anything wrong, especially if you use any rough tone of voice. And if your words are okay, still it can cause damage. For example, there is somebody standing inside the ward, and if I shout and say, "Hey, why are you standing there? What do you want?" And instead of that, if I say, "Hey, what do you want? Tell me, how can I help you?" Same words can have a different impact when you change your tone of voice. So in public speaking, we have to make sure that we use well-modulated, confident, firm, but non-aggressive tone. So repeatedly, I am emphasizing on being non-aggressive, mindfully, consciously, because you are using aggressive tone, aggressive words will promote or provoke aggression. So very mindfully, we have to prevent this kind of a situation in our workplace. You have to speak soft, but at the same time, you have to be audible, especially with the kind of PP that all of us are using. There's a possibility if you speak very soft, people will not understand. Especially some of the vocabulary may be absolutely new for the patient or patient's attendant, or even for your staff. So you have to be audible so that they can understand in one go, and you save energy by not repeating it. In workplace, please avoid high-pitched tone, shrieking tone, or shouting style of communication that's going to aggravate the situation and create aggression, not only in you, in also the other party with whom you are communicating. So very mindfully, please check your tone. Any kind of tone which is kind of irresponsible or casual can create conflict, because 10% of the conflicts are because of the wrong words. 90% of the conflicts are due to wrong tone of voice. So we have to make sure that we don't sound casual, disinterested, unconcerned, inconfident, rude and authoritative, and aggressive in our communication. Very carefully make sure that you sound sincere, responsible, confident, soft and polite, at the same time assertive, by being firm in what you are saying. The third part of communication is the non-verbal communication, which is basically your body language. You'll be surprised to know that most of our communication actually happens through our body language. Only 7% of the communication happens through words. 38% is through your tone of voice, and rest is your body language, whereas most of the times we are not very vigilant about our body language. Our facial expression, the way we stand, the way we sit, the way we even look at the person communicates a lot. So we have to be very mindful of the expressions that we have. For example, if I'm talking to somebody and if I have expressions of anger, irritability, unhappiness, or negative attitude towards the person or towards the situation, that is going to automatically communicate to the person that I'm not happy interacting with you. So your facial expressions are like your mirror to your mind. Very carefully, you have to choose your facial expression. It has to be calm, neutral, and firm when you are interacting with patient and public. Making eye contact is very important when you're interacting with somebody, especially when you're talking about something very serious. If you make eye contact, the other person understands that you mean business and they need to listen to you. So when you make eye contact, you are also able to communicate the seriousness of the communication and your expectation from the person. It also shows that you are interested to talk, you are attentive in listening, and you want that person to respond. So making eye contact becomes very essential when you are communicating with anybody in this situation. Patients and their families' communication needs are going to be increased in this time. So we got to understand how do you manage those expectations without taxing yourself. For example, let us please remember when the patient is critical or has a serious diagnosis, the family is actually looming under the greatest fear of life. They are fearing death. So anybody who gets to know that, okay, I'm corona positive, even if you think that it's a simple case, hopefully this is not going to turn into any kind of emergency, the immediate thought that the patient or the family would have is that it can lead to death. So their whole behavior, their communication, their expression is going to be very different. Even their communication needs are going to change accordingly. So we got to address their concerns by answering their questions and clarifying their doubts. We may be in hurry, we may be tired, we may be exhausted, we may be overworked, but if you will not address their concern and if you will not answer some of their pertinent questions, they're going to stay confused and going to bother you again and again. Even if you could have a list of frequently asked questions, and if all your team members know the exact answer to be given, it can relieve you of the responsibility of every time answering the questions of the patient or their family. So I'm not saying it is only the doctor who is supposed to answer all the questions, but some of the frequently asked questions, okay, where am I going to be transferred and who is going to look after me? All those things can be looked after by the team also. And if you can develop answers around it, standardized kind of answer, it will make your job easy. So when you're explaining about the patient's condition, because that is something going to be primarily the responsibility of the treating doctor, so you got to understand your language has to be simple, easy to understand, and also if you could use some audio-visual aid to explain them what exactly you are saying. For example, to show here, I'm showing you a picture where a doctor is showing the X-ray to the patient's family. In case if you want to show the changes in the patient's X-ray, if you could show them one X-ray with normal condition and the patient's X-ray with the changed lung condition, family would understand it better. Your job will become easier. They will understand it faster, and you will actually be relieved of, that tension to explain them. So you got to really have some ways to explain everything that you need to tell to the patient or their family. Empathy is a great tool that will help you design your communication. Empathy is a tool where you're able to put yourself in the family's condition and see how they must be feeling. Before we actually had lockdown and all those things, somewhere in the first week of March, it was around 4th of March, I took a program for some international candidates on behalf of PHFI. And after 10-15 days, I literally had those symptoms of, breathlessness and fever and cough. I actually had a feeling that I'm infected by corona. And I could understand how others must be feeling. Though I called a doctor friend of mine and I discussed with him and I told him about the condition. He said, let's start with the antibiotics. And if you don't respond to the antibiotic, then maybe we'll consider taking further treatment or further investigation. Fortunately, symptoms subsided and I recovered out of it in 3-4 days time. But I could genuinely see how it feels to be there. The moment you get to know that I have infection or I can have infection, the whole world appears alien to you. You are really very apprehensive and concerned about yourself and your family. So this is one tool I think we really need to practice. If you will understand empathy, and not only in COVID time, I'm talking about anytime you're handling your patients, if you're able to understand their point of view, you can see their world through their eyes. You will not be judgmental. You will not be angry with them. You will not even be annoyed with them, because you will understand anybody who will be in this situation would act or behave in this manner. So rather than getting angry or annoyed about their behavior, you will try to relieve their anxiety, or you will address their anxiety. You will understand their feeling. Like for example, denial in this case, the moment we say quarantine and they deny, if you understand that denial is part of illness and that has to be dealt with, I think you will not be at least annoyed or aggressive with the patient. So you will understand their feelings, and your communication will automatically, address those feelings and would compensate or would cover those feelings and address those their queries. So you will also be able to see a lot of anxiety and fear among the patient and the family. This needs to be addressed, of course, without giving any kind of false hope. We need to help them see whatever best is possible will be done to help and save the patient. In case if the patient is in hospital or is under your care, and if you need to update the family about the patient condition, please make sure that you are straightforward, but at the same time very sensitive, because it is family who is very apprehensive. They want to know about the patient's condition. You got to be sensitive, but at the same time, if the condition is serious or there are some changes in the condition, please be straightforward, because any attempt to minimize the severity is going to create vagueness and confusion. So here you have to be very careful in choosing your words so that it actually exactly communicates the seriousness of the situation. So in between, when you are updating them, pause frequently, because when you give them some bad news, for example, if you say the condition is serious and maybe we will not be able to save the patient, for example, when you are breaking the bad news, so this is something that's going to come as a shock. Family will take time to assimilate it. They may not even believe it. They may actually go in shock. They may be in disbelief. So you will have to pause in between to allow them to understand what you're saying or to assimilate what you're saying. And in case if they have a question to ask, they have to be allowed to ask the question. Again, use simple language, as simple as possible. Avoid all kind of technical jargons. Use patients' reports to support your point of view or to help them see the reality. Check for understanding. Frequently, maybe you have to ask them, are you understanding what I'm saying? Is it clear to you? Do you want to ask anything? So that's going to give them a chance to ask you in case if they have to say something. Silence is another good way of communicating empathy and also to facilitate the discussion. Sometimes we don't have words to comfort person. But if you can keep quiet for maybe few seconds, 2 or 3 or 5 seconds, that also communicates that you can see things from their point of view, or you can see how upset they are or how disturbed they are. Also, family would get a chance to ask you a question or say something in case they have to say you. When you're interacting with the patient, please be mindful of your body language. Anywhere, if your body language is intimidating or authoritative or rude, that's going to interfere with your rapport building with the patient's family and also going to interfere with the communication. So even the stiffness of your neck or expressions on your face, in case if they're authoritative or rude, or you're staring at the patient's family, or they are not communicating anything. For example, if I have just no expression on my face, the patient or the patient's family might think that I'm not affected by what is happening in their life. So we have to be very mindful of the expressions or the eye contact or the body language that we are using when we are interacting with them. The usual response of the patient or the family will be, to start with, they may actually be in denial. They may not believe you. They may actually be shocked to hear what you are saying. They may be even angry with you. Anger, it's not just with you. Anger could be with themselves. Oh, I brought him late. Why did I not listen to to somebody? Or why did I get it? How did I get it? So there can be n number of things that may be going on. So they may be unhappy, aggressive, blaming. They can be revengeful. Then once they get to realize the reality, once they get to see the reality, they may go into bargaining mode. So they may plead you, please save my patient, please help do something. Can we shift the patient to another hospital? Can we ask somebody's opinion? Can we try some other modality? So this is nothing but that it's a plea, it's a request to save the patient. So we got to understand what is going on inside the patient or the family's mindset. Slowly, when they get to realize the reality, they become quiet, they become low down, they become depressed, and finally they accept it. So this is a psychological response to grief. It is called DAPDA: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So during this phase, we have to be with the patient's family to finally bring them to acceptance. Let me tell you one more thing, not only from the point of view of COVID, even when you are breaking bad news in other situations, after COVID, when we'll be dealing with the other kind of patient, please stay with the patient's family till they actually get into the acceptance mode. Anywhere when you leave the communication in between, it leaves a scope for aggression or retaliation. So how do you deal with it? For example, if you see them in denial, please provide them information in a neutral way to help them see the reality. If they're angry, stay calm, listen to them, support them. Do not be aggressive. Do not give tit for tat. Do not try to reply every statement that they make. When they are bargaining, don't get upset about in your mind, how can money save everything? How can money save life? Do you think I am God to save your patient? So be empathetic, see the situation from the point of view. Had my family member been sick, even I would have requested for a similar situation. So help them see the reality and then assert so that they get to accept the reality. Once you see them accepting the reality, this is the time to give them direction, what next has to be done. For example, if patient has to be shifted to ICU, or the patient has to be shifted to another hospital, or in case if there's no scope to save, or in case, unfortunately, if the patient has died, so you have already announced death. So that is where you have to actually give them direction. Now, what next has to be done? And then you have to encourage them to take that appropriate action. It's not just the patient and the family who get affected, even the healthcare professionals who are dealing with the patient directly, they are overwhelmed with the situation. I really wonder the state of mind of doctors at, in US or Spain or Italy or France, where the number of deaths are just unbelievable. I'm sure we all are experiencing similar kind of feelings where we are uncertain about the outcome of disease. We also fear that we will be destroying the patients and the family's hope when we say the condition is critical. We also feel inadequate in the face of uncontrollable disease like COVID. And also sometimes we are not even prepared to receive unanticipated emotional reactions from the family. For example, if they blame us, or if they're angry with us, or if they accuse of not looking after the patient, that's something that we didn't expect from the patient's family, and we are not even prepared to handle that situation. And sometimes if we have painted a very optimistic picture, we feel embarrassed about it. For example, the doctor friend of mine whom I called to tell or check with him that could it be COVID, and he said, no, don't worry, it is not COVID, you just take antibiotic and you should be fine. Unfortunately, if this had turned out into COVID positive, then I'm sure even he would have been very, embarrassed at what he said to me, and I would have been maybe annoyed with him to not have actually, given me a more informed, picture. So how do you prevent this? For example, yes, we know we are uncertain about the outcome of the disease, but at the same time, we know every day we are getting to hear new protocols, new methodologies that are being tried. So please stay updated and know what is latest happening across the world. Also give realistic picture to the patient's family so that they get prepared for the eventuality. I know when we tell the truth, we are going to destroy their hope, but at the same time, we have to appreciate the importance of updating, because when you will update them on regular basis, this will prepare them for the eventuality. They will react much less if they know or if they're ready for the news. Yes, we know that we feel inadequate in the face of this disease. We got to learn to accept the professional limitation, but I'm sure in the time to come, a lot of research is going on. We'll have treatments available, we'll have vaccines available, hopefully in the time to come. So if you're not prepared to handle the unanticipated, the reaction, please keep the family updated. learn to observe and handle emotion. When I say learn to observe the patient's family's behavior, I'm talking about social triage. It's a new term that I have coined. We normally talk about medical triage, where we identify the patient's condition and then we accordingly handle it. I talk about social triage, where you observe the family's reactions and their behavior. So you get to know that there is a possibility that this family might overreact to the news. So we got to prepare them little more, carefully, so that they don't overreact to the situation. And also, when to avoid any kind of embarrassment, we need to actually give them realistic expectation. No medical intervention is risk free. I'm not talking only from the COVID point of view. Even procedures done in the OPD can lead to fatal consequences. I've seen patients collapsing after test dose, or even after simple OPD procedure. So we really got to make sure that we don't give them any kind of unrealistic expectation. Last but not the least, please do not forget to document all communication. All communication protocols that we know that needs to be done, even otherwise, should be followed even in COVID era, because this is something that's going to save us after we are out of it. I don't know how many of us are going to be sued for medical negligence or the lapses in the patient care. These documents are going to save all of us in the time to come. Also, the thumb rule is document what you communicate and communicate what you document. Make sure that you match both the things simultaneously. Lot of your documentation is also going to be of great help tomorrow when some research is being done on this. So the management part we will be able to learn if you are able to document every detail that you do in the patient care or the findings in the patient care. Once you break the bad news, the patient or the family may feel very anxious, and they may feel lost, and they may also feel that we are going to be left out. So it's time to be aware now what next has to be done, what is the protocol, how do you refer the patient to the other hospital, or how do you, in case it's death, then how do you dispose of the body, or what is the, in case if the patient has to be transferred to another hospital, what is the treatment plan. Explain it to the patient's family. I think this is where a lot of communication failure happen. They feel at loss. I also saw a video few days ago where a lady and a child were actually literally praying on video on the media that my father is in the hospital, we cannot get in touch with them, we don't know about him, and he's messaging us that I am not sure what is happening with me. So I think that communication has to be filled in to make sure that the families and the, they are aware of what is happening in the patient's care. So arrange for appropriate referral, give contact details, whatever has to be shared, reassure that they're not going to be abandoned. So some quick important communication tips for especially in public: please no loose talk, no comment against any religion or community, no blame game. Choose your words carefully, because you don't know who may be recording you or who may be, taking you to the social media. Mind your body language, because a lot of communication happens through your body language. Consciously stay calm for your own well-being, and then positive and helpful attitude. Some of us may be very overwhelmed with the long duty and exhaustion, missing your family members, especially if you're not able to meet them on regular basis, or you're staying away from your family. Many of us are actually overwhelmed with the volume and the acuity of the situation, anger about being unprepared for this situation, frustrated over lack of supplies, because we get to hear at certain places we have shortage of supplies. Many of us also may feel guilt over inability to save all when we feel we are short of supplies and services. We also feel angry and anxious when we feel that, okay, this isn't fair, I don't deserve this, we don't have enough PPs, I might catch infection. So these are all thoughts that we may all have. Or there is no sure shot protocol free treatment, we may run out of medicine, we don't have enough ventilator. These all can provoke anxiety and anger among all of us. Though all of this has been taken care by Dr. Anuj, he has really wonderfully covered it, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. But to conclude, I can say, please stay calm and cheerful, even in this stressful situation. And that has to be learned, that has to be practiced. It will not happen on its own. At your workplace, please avoid being aggressive, because that is going to, it is contagious. It is going to provoke others and make situation worse. So 4 things, if you can look after, to summarize, if you can look after 4 things, I think most of the stress can be looked after. One is 6 to 8 hours of sleep is must for everybody. Make sure that you catch 6 to 8 hours sleep. It's a biological need. Don't miss on sleeping these many hours. Even if you cannot sleep at one go. Catch this sleep maybe twice, maybe, but this should be on your priority. 3 meals a day means 3 meals a day. Do not miss your meals. Make sure that you take your food before you go for duty. You cannot put your car on highway without petrol. Make sure that you should go tank full when you're going on duty. Use all precautions and PPE to protect yourself and also protect your team, because every team member is important. And in case if your team members get infected, you are more likely to get the infection. Address your concern on regular basis, clarify them, sort them out, address them. Mindfully stay calm and cheerful, and stop complaining and blaming, because that creates negativity around you. Very important here is positive attitude. I'll just quickly say a short story to summarize what I'm saying. Your attitude is finally that's going to decide how you're going to feel being in this situation and when you're out of the situation. There was a building being made and somebody was passing by that road. He asked one of the laborer, "What are you doing?" The laborer said, "I'm working here, I'm going to get paid for it, and I'm going to get money to look after my family." So many of us do job just to get money. To the second one, when he goes and asks, "What are you doing?" he is very unhappy, annoyed, and frustrated with the situation. And he says, "Can't you see? Are you blind? Can't you see that I'm breaking stone?" So many of us are very unhappy with this situation, and we feel caught up or trapped or unlucky or whatever you may think. He goes to the third one and asks, "What are you doing?" He takes this gentleman to one side of the building, and you see this map there, and he shows this map and says, "I'm constructing this temple here." All three of the laborers were doing the same job, but they were working with a different mindset. So you got to check your attitude. What is your attitude towards your work? If you think you are actually contributing your best to the welfare of the nation, to the welfare of the society, I think you are doing your job well. Please remember, even this is going to pass, but how you deal with it will decide how you will be remembered. There was a jungle fire, and all animals were coming out of the jungle fire, rushing out, fearing that they might get burned in the fire. A small bird, maybe sparrow, also comes out with these animals. It rushes to the water body nearby, picks a small quantity of water, and throws on the jungle fire. Everybody laughs at this bird and say, "Do you think this water is going to extinguish the fire?" She says, "No, I know this water is not going to extinguish the fire, but when tomorrow history will be written, I will be written as warrior and you will be written as spectator." So it's our call, it's our choice whether we want to be written as a warrior or we want to be written as a spectator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Endu. I think this is a wonderful, not only a story, but a clear-cut message that all of us need to be warriors and not spectators. One, in our own way, in our own small ways, big ways, large ways, small ways, we must contribute to this massive crisis, unprecedented till that. And we must remember that mantra that this too shall pass.
We shall pass.
That is
Yes.
this is the golden mantra.
Yes.
But before we take questions, and there are so many of them, I think we must quickly move on to Dr. Pranita Joshi Deshmukh.